Hi there. So, this week we are starting the second last module of new material for this course. I don't know who is more excited for it, me or the students. So, let's get down to the business. You might remember this diagram from our earlier classes, and this week our focus will remain on the peripheral nervous system, but we will be looking at the autonomic nervous system in particular. This is especially important for us as understanding autonomic nervous system functions in a normal state will help us to predict the effects of many drugs that we may describe to the patients. And not only that, but also many of the side effects that may occur. So, autonomic nervous system is commonly abbreviated as ANS. And I will be using this convention on this module too to save myself from writing it fully out every time. And it acts on these smooth muscles. Remember these from your review of basic muscle tissue types? I will add to the end a link to video on BIO201 where we looked at different muscle types. And also on the cardiac muscle, so affecting our heart rate and such. And then glands too. And most of these effects are seen as direct physiological measurements that we may take, like the heart rate, blood pressure, functioning of the digestive system, and so on and so on. Here is the fun one. If we think of why these changes keep happening, it is to make sure that the body conditions are maintained within a certain range to allow optimal functioning. And of course, we remember that as the homeostasis. So, seeing how this concept, once again, is a vital one for us. Well, one more thing that I want to mention here is that this autonomic nervous system operates on a subconscious level. And because we do not have a conscious or voluntary control over it, it is often known as an involuntary branch of the nervous system, or sometimes as a general visceral motor system. So, I'm going to take us back to this graph again, but just for a second. I want to highlight here how the autonomic nervous system differs from the somatic nervous system. So let's have a look of that briefly. Although both of them have motor fibers, the biggest differences that we will see are in the effectors, efferent pathways and ganglia, and the target organ responses to neurotransmitters. So let's discuss these differences just briefly. The first one we touched upon earlier. So while somatic nervous system branch was all about innervating skeletal muscles, the autonomic one innervated cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and various glands. See how the ANS is responsible for heart rate through controlling the cardiac muscle, blood pressure through smooth muscle around the blood vessels, and many secretions such as those at the digestive system through the control of glands. So it really is starting to make sense how this branch controls all these things, right? Next, let's have a look of the efferent pathways and ganglia. So what we see with the somatic nervous system is that the cell bodies of these are located still within the central nervous system. And they have this single axon that extends directly to the target. In this diagram, the target would be the skeletal muscle on the right. In autonomic nervous system, in contrast, we have a setup of two neurons. And these are the preganglionic neuron with its cell body within the central nervous system, and in contrast, this neuron's axon is thin and lightly myelinated. That then ends to the autonomic ganglion. And then postganglionic neuron is outside the central nervous system. Its cell body synapses with the preganglionic axon in the autonomic ganglion, with then the postganglionic axon running to the effector organ. And on this diagram, it is the heart. So see how these two differ significantly in terms of their efferent pathways arrangement. The last one that we really need to talk about is the neurotransmitter effects. All somatic motor neurons release acetylcholine, which is typically abbreviated as ACH. And the effects of this is always simulatory. While in case of the autonomic nervous system, this is a little more complex. The preganglionic fibers release acetylcholine, while the postganglionic ones release norepinephrine or acetylcholine at effectors. And the effects of these can be either simulatory or inhibitory, depending on the type of receptors. So those were our three differences between the somatic and autonomic nervous systems: the effectors, efferent pathways and ganglia, and the target organ responses to neurotransmitters. But there are also some overlap between the both, and I think that before we wrap up this video, we should have a look at that. Both of these systems are regulated and coordinated by the higher brain centers. Most spinal and many cranial nerves contain both somatic and autonomic fibers. And when these function, there is often overlap too. Say the somatic nervous system aims to activate skeletal muscles, but when very active, these skeletal muscles require more oxygen and glucose. And therefore, the autonomic nervous system would be recruited to help too by speeding up the heart rate and open airways, for example. So, that's it for this video. We will continue our exploration of the autonomic nervous system in the next video.